A gimmick Pokemon is one that doesn't follow conventional Pokemon design. They are usually very limited in what they can do, but are created to showcase some novel mechanic. Ditto would be an example of a gimmick Pokemon in my eyes. Its stats are terrible, and the only move it can learn is Transform, allowing it to take on the image of an enemy Pokemon. Another example of a gimmick Pokemon would be Cast Form, a Pokemon with poor stats across the board, but the novel ability Forecast, allowing it to change its type based on the active weather. Cast Form has 4 different type forms for each weather effect. Cast Form was designed to teach players about the concept of weather synergy in the game, and is not a very powerful choice outside of this. But there's one gimmick Pokemon that has actually seen consistent success in competitive throughout multiple generations. Unlike the other examples, this Pokemon's gimmick is actually really valuable, and this Pokemon is Smeargle. Smeargle was introduced in Generation 2, and its stats are terrible. To make up for these stats, it better have an outstanding gimmick, and that it does. Smeargle has the signature move Sketch, which allows it to copy the last move used by the enemy Pokemon and keep it permanently. Thanks to Sketch, Smeargle is able to learn any move in the entire game. The incredible utility and role compression provided by Smeargle, who can squeeze every tool your team is missing on a single Pokemon, make it worth using despite its terrible stats. Smeargle often finds ways to fit on competitive teams throughout the generations, especially with each new game introducing more and more excellent utility moves for it to take advantage of. Let's take a look at the most successful gimmick Pokemon in history, and how it has functioned throughout the years competitively. But first, an important update. Since Smeargle is able to learn the move High Horsepower, Smeargle has put forth the claim that he is in fact a horse. Many horse purists have denied this claim, labeling it absurd. And in this already tumultuous political landscape, introducing a new horse into the equation might just shake the very foundations of our world. Subscribe to the channel so that we can gather the Horse Tribunal and settle this matter once and for all. Thank you. In Generation 2 OU, where Smeargle debuted, this Pokemon was not just powerful, it was game-breaking at a certain point. Smeargle's access to any move in the entire game created an absurd combination that led to some really cheesy and nearly unbreakable win conditions. Smeargle can get the combination of Spore, which is a perfectly accurate sleep move, Spider Web, which is a trapping move that prevents the enemy from switching out, and Baton Pass, which actually maintains that trapping effect and allows Smeargle to switch into whatever it wants. With the enemy trapped, you can set up against this unfortunate foe and stack up all the accuracy debuffs against them that you need, then pivot to a sweeper and just steamroll the entire game. In this tournament set between 2 of Gen 2's greatest players, Fear and Pogus, Fear leads off with Smeargle, uses Spiderweb, and Baton passes to Umbreon, who can then spam Charm and Sand Attack against the helpless Snorlax until it has the minimum possible attack and accuracy, leaving it completely useless. Fear is in complete control of the game at this point and can just Baton Pass around between multiple Pokemon, paralyzing this Snorlax, spamming boosts on Jolteon, passing those boosts to teammates, and the Snorlax player can't really do anything. Because of Smeargle, the combination of trapping moves and Baton Pass had to be banned. But beyond this, Smeargle still does have some useful application in the Gen 2 OU metagame. In this set between Tony and Fear, Tony was using a Smeargle with Spore, Glare for paralysis, and Spikes, along with Super Fang to deal 50% damage to something on the way out, leaving it significantly chipped. This is basically using Smeargle as a very aggressive opener, putting something to sleep for early momentum and disruption, creating spikes on the field to apply long-term pressure to the enemy, and going out with some paralysis and Super Fang for extra damage, setting up for its teammates to keep up the aggression and carry that momentum to a victory. Moving forward, this kind of Smeargle set would be the most common way to use the Pokemon in future generations, taking advantage of Spore for that perfectly accurate sleep, one of the best moves in the game, entry hazards to start the game off with a big early advantage, and other miscellaneous utility options to fill the rest of the moveset, and disrupt the enemy as much as you possibly can early on. Smeargle can also be used for Baton Pass strategies in Gen 2 OU, passing advantageous effects like agility or belly drum to teammates. But I think this style of Smeargle team is a little bit less consistent, mostly due to Smeargle's frailty defensively. In Generation 3 OU, Smeargle is actually a pretty fantastic offensive hazard setter, and I think it deserves an OU rank, to be honest. It consistently pops up in tournaments and is a real cornerstone mode of certain hyper offense teams, which can be quite strong. Smeargle operates very much the same way in Generation 3, but with spikes able to be stacked up to 3 layers now, that early spikes aggression is even more valuable. And Smeargle has a lot more utility options to take advantage of in its moveset too. Will-O-Wisp is a common one, a very high impact status ailment that can completely cripple certain Pokemon, effectively KOing them if it lands on the right target. Explosion is extremely common on Smeargle for its momentum, denying an enemy a turn and actually dealing pretty solid damage just off its base power alone, despite Smeargle's low attack stat. And Smeargle sets can get pretty creative in this generation. The player Blue's Energy has experimented with Transform on Smeargle to, well, transform into the enemy Pokemon. Sometimes that could be quite good, like a Dragon Dance Tyranitar lead. Endeavor is a good option on Smeargle. You can use Select now, which is a new item in Gen 3, and EV yourself to live key hits, proc the berry, and use Endeavor, which deals enough damage to bring the enemy to the same amount of HP that you have, so it will bring them extremely low, allowing a teammate to follow up. Baton Pass is very restricted in Generation 3, and you cannot pass multiple sources of boosts on one team. Before these restrictions were implemented, Smeargle was an extremely powerful Pokemon with the Belly Drum plus Select Berry Baton Pass combo, but that's no longer a legal combination, because Belly Drum and Select Berry are 2 different boost sources. However, a strategy Smeargle can take advantage of is Dragon Dance and Baton Pass. You can put the enemy to sleep early on, use Dragon Dance, and now you outrun just about everything. And you can Baton Pass that Dragon Dance boost to maybe a Metagross or a Tyranitar or a Metacham, some powerful physical attacker that can get some really good early momentum going and apply a lot of pressure to the enemy. In Generation 4 OU, Smeargle gained some really great new options to take advantage of. Most importantly, it gained the new item Focus Sash, allowing it to survive a one-hit KO from full health and hang on at 1 HP. This crucial extra turn for Smeargle in the lead position allows it to do one other useful thing per game, which is extremely valuable. Smeargle also has access to Stealth Rock now, the all-new best entry hazard in the game. A single turn using Stealth Rock has a massive impact compared to a single turn using Spikes, and it makes Smeargle's early aggression even more valuable now. Another option Smeargle has in Gen 4 is using a Choice Scarf along with Trick. With Choice Scarf and Spore in the lead slot, you can guarantee a early sleep, and later on you can trick that Choice Scarf onto an enemy and cripple them if they're a utility Pokemon that does not want to be locked into one move every time it switches in. Another fantastic new utility option for Smeargle in Gen 4 was Luna Dance, allowing it to sacrifice itself to fully heal up a teammate, which is a great way to use Smeargle in the mid game after you've already gotten its early value. Healing up a sweeper like a Gyarados or something else that's been brought low over the course of a game can lead into a victory. Smeargle is not great in the Gen 5 OU metagame because sleep as a mechanic is actually banned outright. Gen 5 buffed sleep indirectly by introducing a new system where the sleep counter resets every time a Pokemon switches out. So Smeargle's greatest tool, Spore, is not even available to use in OU, but it is available in Ubers, and Smeargle would go on to have a pretty successful career in the Ubers format moving forward. The new move Shell Smash was introduced in Generation 5, one of the strongest boosting moves in all of Pokemon, granting times to attack, special attack, and speed at the small cost of some lowered defensive stats. And Smeargle can now use this and Baton Pass it to some of the most powerful legendaries in history. Putting an enemy to sleep early on and then Shell Smash passing to a powerful mixed attacking legendary like Dialga, Zekrom, or even Mewtwo can be an incredible way to open an Ubers game. In Gen 6, Smeargle suffered from a mechanical change. Grass types were now immune to powder-based moves, meaning Spore was not a reliable form of sleep setting against everything. Grass types were now immune to it. For this reason, sometimes Smeargle chose to use Dark Void instead as its sleeping move of choice. But Smeargle also had access to the all-new hazard of Sticky Web in these games. Sticky Web is able to lower the enemy's speed by 1 stage on switch-in, and this is a great way to enhance slow, bulky attackers, and a fantastic hyper-offensive strategy in Gen 6 OU. Sticky Web is actually really powerful up in Ubers. In this format, having the speed advantage advantage is extremely powerful, with speed ties being quite common since you see a lot of the same Pokemon. And Groudon Primal, the all-new king of Gen 6 and 7 Ubers, benefited significantly from Sticky Web, allowing it to outrun many things that it otherwise couldn't. Nuzzle was another new option that Smeargle had access to here, a new move that was granted to the Pikachu clones, a simple 20 base power physical attack with a 100% chance to inflict paralysis. This is more accurate than Thunder Wave and is not prevented by Taunt since it's an attack, not a status move. Smeargle was not present in the Gen 8 games, but in Gen 9 OU, Smeargle is unfortunately not fantastic. Gen 9 is another generation where sleep is outright banned as a mechanic, which was a controversial decision that I did make a video about if you're interested. Smeargle did get a lot of new tools like the new signature moves of Stone Axe and Ceaseless Edge, which are attacks that can set Stealth Rock and Spikes respectively. We also have the all-new move Mortal Spin, a poison type attack that removes hazards and inflicts poison against the enemy. But without Spore, there's not much reason to use Smeargle over other aggressive hazard setters like Rabombi for Sticky Web or Hisuian Samurott for the powerful Ceaseless Edge. Smeargle is a bit outclassed in Generation 9, and without even having access to Spore, it's suffering a lot. Up in Ubers, Spore is still allowed, but it might as well not be because the all-new Pokemon Miraidon sets Electric Terrain on the field. Miraidon is one of the top-tier legendary Pokemon in Gen 9 Ubers, and Electric Terrain grants a sleep immunity to everything grounded. So running sleep moves in Gen 9 Ubers is a little bit of a waste when they're so easily stopped by such a common Pokemon. But overall, Smeargle has had a very successful competitive career. It's also a fantastic Pokemon across the generations in VGC doubles, with all of its fantastic utility and roll compression having immense value there too, with great doubles moves like Fake Out and Wide Guard, Tailwind, whatever you need really, being available on Smeargle. I think Smeargle is quite an interesting Pokemon, and it's cool to see how its moveset choices have evolved and changed to adapt to every new metagame. Smeargle can use some really interesting choices and be quite customizable. While Smeargle is a bit infamous for being a little annoying bowl of utility, I quite like it, and I think that there can be a lot of creativity in Smeargle's usage. This Pokemon with abysmal stats designed to be a gimmick has aged much better than many Pokemon have from back in Generation 2, and has a pretty fantastic competitive legacy.